talk about the significance of this week around campaign finance.
Well, the importance of the McCutcheon case is it's the first time people have zeroed in on contribution limitations. The law is that expenditures, if you spend your own money, that's now completely uncontrolled. And so you have these extraordinarily wealthy people, the Koch brothers or George Soros on the other side, pouring huge amounts of their own money in. Nothing can be done about that. Up until now, contributions, though, were treated differently because the idea of a contribution created the possibility of a quid pro quo deal with the candidate. And so contributions could be limited. And there are two kinds of limitations. There's something called a base limitation, which limits the amount that can be given to any particular candidate or any particular committee, and then the aggregate limitation, which is a total that can be given to everybody. The numbers are huge. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. The existing numbers now are $5,200 for a candidate in an election cycle.
That you can give.
That you can give. $32,400 on top of that to the national political party, $10,000 on top of that to the state party, and $5,000 to as many PACs as you want, and there's an unlimited number of them.
So
the only thing that prevents that from spinning out of control I did the math last night, about $3.6 million each election cycle per person. The only thing that prevents that from spinning out of control are the aggregate limitations, and the aggregate limitations are $123,200, and that's what McCutcheon says is too small.
During the oral arguments, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, quote, "By having these limits, you're promoting democratic participation. Then the little people will count some, and you won't have the super affluent as the speakers that will control the elections." Justice Antonin Scalia responded somewhat sarcastically by saying, quote, "I assume that a law that only prohibits the speech of 2% of the country is okay." That was Scalia.
Well, that's the gulf that divides the court on these cases. Justice Ginsburg thinks that we should use campaign finance reform to advance equality so that everybody has a roughly equal political influence. Scalia says, look, if you're rich, you're entitled to have as much influence as you can buy. And that's now been the collision, and the Scalia side has won 5-4 consistently in recent years.
At a rally outside the Supreme Court Tuesday, Senator Bernie Sanders said unlimited private spending undermines U.S. democracy.
The bottom line here is that if we do not want to move this nation to an oligarchic form of society, where a handful of billionaires can determine the outcome of these elections, that it is imperative not only that we overturn Citizens United, but that we put a lid on how much people can contribute in elections. Freedom of speech, in my view, does not mean the freedom to buy the United States government.
And on the other hand, you have Shaun McCutcheon's lawyer's comments, this Erin Murphy, during oral arguments, saying, quote, "By prohibiting contributions that are within the modest base limits Congress has already imposed to combat the reality or appearance of corruption, these limits simply seek to prevent individuals from engaging in too much First Amendment activity." Burt Newborn.
Well, that's the collision. The collision is that some people like Bernie Sanders says it is too much First Amendment activity when you can spend so much money that you have a hugely disproportionate influence, and they owe you favors later. What kind of a democracy is that? Ruth Ginsburg put it perfectly. She said if these aggregate limitations go down, 500 people will control American democracy. It will be government for the 500 people, not for anybody else. And that's the risk.